time. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see you, those of you I can see. I'm Cathy O'Callaghan, and I am the founder of Hearts and Homes for Refugees. I see some very familiar names here. It's good to see some of you, Susan and Astrid, Marianne. And we are going to, in the next half hour or so, give you as much information about community sponsorship and the work that we do. We assume you're here because you want to help refugees, and that's what we do. So a little background, Hearts and Homes for Refugees started in 2016. But before we start, if I don't take care of the housekeeping issues, I'm going to hear about it from Amy. First of all, this is being recorded, as you know. We aren't going to go through the formal introduction, but I would ask that you click the chat and please introduce yourselves and where you're from. And if you are a first timer, new to this, let us know. And then we're going to have questions. I'm sure you'll have questions. We'll try to give you so much information you have nothing left to ask, but please save your questions for the end. And I think that's it. And you can put them in the chat as well, and we can circle back to them. Okay. So again, welcome everyone. I'm Cathy O'Callaghan. This is Amy Robertson, our program director. And in 2015, like so many people around the world, I looked at what was happening at the crisis in Syria, and like so many others, moved by the images from the news of Syria and around the world. The fact is, though, that Syria touched our hearts, but it was only part of an ongoing global refugee crisis. It was enough to move so many of us to open our hearts and homes and find ways to help those who were at risk and forced to leave their countries. The global crisis, over 82 million people have been forcibly displaced. About 26 million of those are technically refugees, and almost half are children. And I think it's important to know that less than 1% will ever be resettled anywhere. And again, 80 million displaced residents represents 1% of the world's population. And that is growing, as we know. So Hearts and Homes responded by creating Around a Kitchen Table, a community-based, volunteer-driven organization. And our goal is to resettle refugees and to build a longer welcoming table, one family at a time. We empower refugees in rebuilding their new lives, and we want to do that so that they have dignity and hope when they arrive and as long as they're here. We harness the goodwill and the networks in our own communities to make a difference. And we understand that the communities and the grassroots really can be a powerful force. Our mission is based on this, that when communities join together and we bring them together and they're given the opportunity to welcome refugees, the model will shift the paradigm of refugee resettlement in this country. And that's happening now. 6 years ago, it was not the case. But so many people around the country, Hearts and Homes is part of a network of organizations like ours that are changing the paradigm of refugee resettlement. Amy? Am I frozen?
No, I had muted myself. I got it now. So Hearts and Homes for Refugees works with various what we call refugee populations. So we're going to start with kind of the definition of who are the people that we are welcoming, because these terms can be used and misapplied in the press and elsewhere. So a refugee is a person outside of his or her home country that's unable or unwilling to return because of persecution or a well-founded fear of persecution. So refugees are vetted. They're screened more intensively than any other group that enters the United States. It starts normally with the UNHCR, UN High Commissioner for Refugees, but also a process that involves the U.S. National Counterterrorism Center, FBI, Department of Defense, State, Homeland Security. It's like 14 U.S. agencies for the ones that are coming to the United States. So Cathy jokes that she might not pass this scrutiny. But the process can take years. And many refugees live in a state of flux for all of those years. Some never get to leave a refugee camp in their entire lifetime. There are camps in parts of Africa where generations have passed and people still live in this state of limbo. So the ones that come to the United States or are resettled in a third country are the lucky ones. They get referred to one of the 9 resettlement agencies, which is HIAS, Catholic Charities, IRC, and others, and they provide basic services and assist them in restarting their lives. Get to the next slide. Then who's an asylee? Very similar to a refugee, the fear of persecution or being persecuted, difference being where they're granted their status. It's someone who's first already entered the United States and then is granted the status for asylum as a refugee. And so this right to seek and be granted asylum, it's guaranteed by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The United States was a leader in the effort to draft this declaration in 1948 and in getting it adopted by the United Nations. So although it seems almost controversial sometimes nowadays in the press about granting asylum, it's actually something that the US has been doing and shown leadership on for a long time. Right now in the US, however, the system has been decimated for processing these cases. And there's about 670,000 asylum seekers who are waiting for their hearings to have their cases resolved. And the wait times for cases average nearly 4.5 years. So this leaves asylum seekers in limbo for a long time, as you can imagine. And this is really important when we talk about Afghans in just a minute. So I want you to remember that point. So who is an SIV? SIVs are this is a different path of arrival to the country, special immigrant visa. And this refers to people, wartime allies from previously Iraq and currently Afghanistan, who've risked their lives working alongside our troops as interpreters, translators, drivers, engineers, mechanics. They worked at our embassy and on US funded projects. They might have been in construction or in women's education. And because of their service to the United States, they and their families have been targeted by the insurgents. By law, the SIV application process must be completed within 9 months. That was after a lawsuit was put against them by a nonprofit and a nonprofit coalition in the United States because these cases were dragging on and people were staying in danger. On average, it's taking 2 or 3 years for a case to process. And then who are the Afghan humanitarian parolees? And I think this is image is something that we've seen. This was actually prior to the evacuation. The evacuation that began in the middle of August. This line is very orderly. This was what was happening before, and it just became mayhem, as you all have seen in the media. This humanitarian parole program, it's a rarely used program that was that normally has been used, if somebody's sick and they come to the United States on parole for up to a year to have their medical treatment, and then they go back home. It's a temporary status. And for all the tens of thousands of Afghans that managed to get on these evacuation flights to US bases, the US processed them by granting them this temporary status of humanitarian parole. They changed it for the Afghans so that they have 2 years. And it gives people in an urgent situation this temporary status. So it's not a visa, it's not a permanent status for building a future. And the parolees must either complete their SIV application if they had one, or if they have a eligible case, or they have to apply for and be granted asylum in that terrible system that we just discussed. So this could take longer than the 2 years that are allotted. And so the concern here is that the volume would break our already damaged system, and these people may not have a path forward. So as I mentioned, it's 76,000 Afghans that were airlifted to the United States since August, and they've been vetted and vaccinated, resettling across the United States, especially in California and Virginia and Texas, but also a fair share of them that have come to New York. Like other refugees, nearly half have been children, and there's 46,000 SIV applicants plus their families stuck in the application processing. Those applicants some of them are in the United States, but most of them are remaining behind in danger. I do want to mention that the Hearts and Homes for Refugees has been very active in this movement to help assist the Afghans. We're part of the Afghan EVAC Coalition, which is a group of about 100 small groups and nonprofits that are working to help get Afghans to safety. And we have been strong and vocal advocates of the Afghan Adjustment Act. And this is an act that we hope will be passed by Congress that would adjust the status of the Afghans to give them a permanent pathway to citizenship in the United States. So you will see in our work from time to time where we are advocating to reach out to your congressperson or your senator. We hope maybe it'll get included in a bill that's coming up in August, this Afghan Adjustment Act, but we definitely need everyone's support in advocating for that, please. Back to you, Cathy. Okay, is Cathy, okay, let me just check my chat real quick to see if Cathy's.
Okay, I'm here. Do you see me? Hear me?
Yeah, now I do. Okay.
So you've got a sense of the history and the why we exist and how we exist, but it's important to know we've been very busy, and we've been busy doing 4 things. There are 4 mandates that drive our work. We build welcoming communities. We welcome refugees and resettle our new neighbors. We assist them in any way possible. We're going to go into what that means and what that looks like. And we convene people just like you to share our knowledge, to inform, and to share resources and expertise. And most important, to provide those kind of volunteer opportunities that so many people are looking for, whether it's a one-time or a longer and greater commitment. We offer all kinds of opportunities because we believe that building scaffolding of volunteers around a family will make the difference in the long term to how they resettle, how they acclimate, and their long-term outlook as aspiring Americans. We educate awareness. What does it mean to be a refugee? What are the needs? And we raise, an understanding of what it is to come to this country, leaving everything, and the only thing you arrive here with is a suitcase and hope in your heart. So if we can share their stories, then we do a better job of welcoming and bringing people together. And as you've seen, Amy, as you heard Amy say, we've been advocating. We've advocated for refugees for 6 years at a time when refugees were not coming here. We were very active in many ways. And now that we have refugees arriving on our shores, we have been able to pull together and weave many people and individuals, faith communities together to welcome them. So welcome, convene, educate, and activate. So what's community sponsorship? In 2016, we welcomed the first family to Westchester County. They came from Syria. We helped them set up a home. We got them enrolled in schools. They actually were here in Pelham. Some of you may remember that. We help them with medical insurance. We build volunteer support beyond the 90 days that they are entitled when they come through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program, because we build a network of support that goes up to a year. We continue to work with resettlement agencies. This is how we resettle refugees, through the U.S. State Department designated resettlement agencies. These refugees arrive and they have Medicare, they have access to certain benefits for a certain period of time. They come with their employment authorization, so they are entitled to work. And our goal is to get them a home, food, a house, a home, and to get them language learning support and also employment. Those are the priorities. So local solution to a global crisis. That's the way we look at community sponsorship. It's what we can do at our level in our neighborhoods. Volunteer-driven refugee resettlement support through communities is volunteer-driven, and it is the fuel behind successful resettlement. We offer up to 12 months of financial and material support. We give volunteers and the refugees the tools, the mentoring, and the guidance that we can in that time. Our partnerships, again, are with U.S. government resettlement agencies. And the partners that come together are local groups, faith groups, civic groups, school, individuals. All of these partners kind of get stitched together into what we call a community sponsor group. We train the volunteers. We build scaffolding around our new arrivals, and we'll go into the details. And we provide a network of safety and support. We are the families and the communities that they left behind. Here are some of our happy volunteers resettling a family in, this actually was for one of the earlier Afghan families that we settled in Yonkers. The beds that you see come from an organization called Sleep in Heavenly Peace. They are our partners to refugee resettlement, and they come in and they build these beds every time we resettle a family. And they're great beds. And we work with an organization called American Muslim Women's Association and the Upper Westchester Muslim Society, and they provide mattresses and bedding for refugees. So what do we do in community sponsorship? We find housing. One of the greatest challenges to the ongoing refugee crisis across the country is housing. We have been able to create relationships with landlords, volunteers who are realtors. People come to support us in so many ways. We have been able, fortunately, to find, for the most part, housing for as many as 7 or 8 people. We provide community orientation. We provide a welcome book that's chock full of information about public transportation, grocery shopping, or laundromats, libraries, lots of the kinds of things that you need if you move to a new community. We don't think about it because we know what our grocery stores look like. We understand how to put the app on our phones for public transportation. So the things that we take for granted, community orientation, volunteers help bring to our refugees. Employment, a very important committee that grown over the last 7-8 months is employment. And our volunteers help with resumes and mock interviews, navigating employment, navigating interviews, and job networking. As I said, language is one of the most important things. So we find ways to supplement both the children in schools, their language, and the language of the parents. Many times our refugees arrive here not speaking English. Sometimes usually the father will speak. The mother may not speak and may not be literate in her own language because she didn't have the advantage of going to school. So our ESOL support in its many forms and through many volunteers is critical to really becoming part of this community and feeling integrated. Education, we enroll the kids in school. It's not always so easy. We just got a family, kids started today, their first day. They've been here for about 6 weeks. Finally started them in an elementary school in our area. We help them in their medical care. As I said, they have Medicaid when they arrive, but navigating the Medicaid system or medical system here is very challenging. What doctors can they use? What plans? How do they make appointments? How do they get to the appointments? They often need specialists. They need dental work. So that's layer upon layer of support in the medical and dental area. And then driving. We have a roster of drivers, people who are very comfortable. They've passed our background checks. They are able to drive, and they may offer to drive to the grocery store once a week, or they may be on a regular basis taking the kids to school. We were able to stitch together, for the most part, driving the elementary kids to school because it's too far for them to walk. And often the moms have other kids at home, dads at work. So now they're getting a service, a carpool service. Volunteer coordination. Volunteer coordination is very important because these cohorts, as we call them, have anywhere from 10 to 15 volunteers, and we have to organize a calendar and activities for the families, keep track of meetings and many tasks that go along with this community sponsor role.
I'm not sure if you got family budgeting and finance and government services, but as you might imagine, those are 2 more critical areas that we have volunteer support families with: getting a household budget, how to file for taxes, talking about how credit works in the US and credit cards, and making sure that they're enrolled in services, government benefits that they might be qualified for, such as Medicaid and SNAP. And then also getting, what's critical to all of us nowadays: internet at home, phones. So, building community is really part of our mission. We have partnered with, there's been we're really shifting the paradigm of refugee resettlement in our region, where we have moved to this strong model of community sponsorship. There are other groups doing similar work here. We've partnered with ICNA, the Interfaith Council for New Americans. We've supported river towns for refugees, including connecting them with another group, the Capuchin Friars, to form a resettlement team. And we've hosted groups that have had volunteers meet one another and form their own budding groups, Austining for Refugees, New Cults for Refugees, and others. But we also build our own teams to help welcome the refugees that come to the Lower Hudson Valley. And we have welcomed 14 families since September 2021. Hearts and Homes, more than 20 Afghan families specifically have come to the region, but there's been 14 families that we welcome, not only from Afghanistan, but also from Myanmar, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. Oops, I kind of got into that a little bit. So we're scaling up. We're scaling up now, not just for Afghans, but for, well, in anticipation of Ukrainians, but also the overall refugee program in the United States has kind of reopened its doors and welcoming those people from other countries. As I mentioned, Honduras and Myanmar. Also, there's a number of Syrians coming from Democratic Republic of Congo, some from different places. In addition to the families we've resettled and that we've assisted other groups to resettle, we've also provided 5 new home setups at the request of one of our resettlement agency partners. And we have more than 200 active community sponsor volunteers at this point. This community sponsorship light, this partnership where we're doing apartment setups, we've done 5 of these. That's not our need right now, but we're just mentioning that from time to time that comes up, that there could be a real finite way to support. And I wanted to also mention that in addition to working with groups, like a church or a synagogue, we work with individual volunteers to match them to a good team. So I wanted to talk for a minute about the joys and the challenges, because, there's so many joys, honestly, like, the picture of showing these kids going to school on their first day, and that's a volunteer taking them. What a highlight that is when you feel like, that young girl who is from Afghanistan, where there's no longer a girls' education. I mean, wow, that's a joy. Mopping a floor and getting an apartment ready, it's a little medium. And definitely a challenge is working, with the Medicaid or healthcare provider, trying to find a dentist that takes their insurance, or, watching a family make choices that wouldn't be the choices that you would recommend. But, empowering them to have the information to make their own choices, that's our role. And there's so many joys in this work that far outweigh the challenges. Cathy?
I think I touched on this. This is such an important part of the work we do, and we're always trying to build up our volunteer support. This is for employment. And so many of you have skills, connections, contacts, that's so important to the work we do and to really helping our new families, that path toward independence, which is the goal, to make them, have a path that enables them to be not needing us, to be on their own, feeling and employment. So this is one of the Zoom sessions where people talked about jobs. These jobs happen within a few weeks. We've gotten very lucky. Usually, you would expect those that are more educated, speak the language. Sometimes it can be frustrating for everyone involved. Other support that we provide.
Cathy, it looks like you're freezing a little bit.
During COVID, but a lot of, right?
Your internet seems to be a little bit freezing.
Why don't you take it over, because I think this is going to happen. Go ahead.
Okay. So language support that Cathy's mentioned, and it's just, what does that really look like? So in addition to searching for classes that might be convenient at the right hours, combined with the job that a person might have, But we also have done a number of creative solutions. Online tutoring is one, which was perfect in COVID, but also we found that it was relevant for people who maybe wouldn't mind going to a class, but they didn't have one that worked with their work schedule. So we have online tutoring, conversation partners that, you know, maybe people who are not formal ESOL, but want to help with either writing skills or just speaking skills. We did do during COVID this fun and games virtual learning, and we've done in-person activities with kids since then. And we had a women's meetup. This has been so important for building the community among the refugees. It was in person pre-COVID, once a month, weekly during COVID, online, and it's still continued. We host WhatsApp chat groups and host Zoom meetings, and the women love to get together and talk. And we added to that recently a weekly Zoom that's in Dari, one of the languages from Afghanistan, so that also the women who don't have English skills can participate in just a kind of having that, breaking the ice and connecting with one another. Other types of complementary support are back to school supplies, winter coats and hats, personal care products. We've had drives for these, and we also work in partnership with other organizations for some of these. And then we also help refugees. It's so important for many of them living in Westchester to get access to a car. And so that has included helping them get their permits and take the driving test. I personally taught an Afghan woman that had never driven before how to drive, and she was so excited and felt that it was transformative for her life. And also we invite donors to make donations of cars. They can donate a car that might be appropriate for a family, or it might be an old car that's not appropriate, and we have a program that converts it to cash that can go towards a vehicle. So those are great ways to support families too. The idea is that we offer a lot of kind of what we call wraparound support. So it's not just, and that's why we work in partnership with the resettlement agencies. We extend the support they can give. We're the you know, feet on the ground, and really can be in tune with what are the current needs and add that additional support. In 2021, we were able, through our volunteers, to offer more than $35,000 worth of in-kind donations to the refugees we serve. And we served around 750, not just the resettled families, but also some that we talked about here in Westchester, but also families that are served by Highest and Catholic Charities and Iris in Connecticut. We were able to provide support to them as well. And so that's a wide range of things: secondhand phones and furniture and bicycles, appliances, et cetera, et cetera. So, and also a growing number of corporate donations, you know, socks and blankets and things like that have been really wonderful. So, you know, we have this also here, although we're talking about volunteers today, you know, also, of course, the funding matters too. And so we did want to throw in a slide about how money gets spent. And, you know, so money's especially focused on these basic needs that you can see: covering rent and groceries for families, and diapers and personal care products that are not covered by their SNAP benefits card, the seasonal clothes, etc. So Cathy, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Am I with you? Yes. All right. So, you know, we've given you scratched the surface, and I hope we haven't left you thinking, what the heck can I do? We know that the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program is reeling from 4 years under a previous administration, where refugees were not admitted and where the agencies were just dismantled, basically. So building back is a heavy lift. We couldn't do it without volunteers, but we have hope. We've seen the hope. You are the hope. You're part of the Humanitarian Nonpartisan Program that will make a difference, and we will continue to create community sponsors. This is such an important part of our mission, and we know that it will work because we have been giving volunteers opportunities to help our new neighbors, to help them rebuild their lives. So we hope that this has been helpful. We can answer questions about it. We hope that you see yourselves in some role at some point. So how about some questions? Anyone?
And if you haven't had the chance to introduce yourself in the chat, please do so. And just looking through the chat, I can see that we have people from different parts of Westchester, Austining, Yonkers, Chappaqua, Portchester, and this is great because we have been resettling refugees in different areas. So we have families in New Rochelle, in Yonkers, in Bedford Hills, and so having, you know, kind of like this different, it's obviously can be easier if somebody's, you know, in your same kind of driving range to support. We have both in-person and online ways of volunteering. So glad to see support coming from across the county. Let me ask if everybody, if you, I don't know if you know how to raise your hand on this, there's a little reaction thing, but if you could let us know if you've had the chance to complete the volunteer application, which is on our website, and it went out in our last newsletter. So if you've done that, then please raise your hand just to get a show of hands. I recognize some of the names. If you haven't had the chance, please go to our website, to the community sponsorship page. And great, we've got 4. And on that page, you can see, you know, sign up to be a volunteer. And that's where there is a lot of information about, you know, you can indicate what you might be interested in doing and what you also could, your time availability and those kinds of things. It's not signing your name in blood, but it gives us a better indication, and then we could move forward from there about what kind of team you might fit on, what your role might be, and we would continue the conversation.
And we're happy to talk offline about your skill set or what you're interested in if you don't see it here. You should know that at this very moment, we do not have the demand from our resettlement agency partners. I think they're kind of getting ready and gearing up for a new wave of Afghans and also Ukrainians, and then the other refugees who've been in the pipeline. So this is a very good time. You know, we have a downtime. We haven't known what that looks like since August, but pulling groups together and giving people the time to get ready and the time to become, you know, onboarded is important. So we're glad that we're taking this break from craziness and able to do this today and meet with all of you.